I can't even lie, even as a college fan myself, I haven't heard too much about this player. But when I checked the updated mock drafts and saw his name at the very top, it compelled me to do my research. And to my surprise, he's got one of, if not the craziest story I've ever seen when it comes to basketball. The half-black, half-Japanese athletic beast had almost no understanding of the English language in his first year at college. And it's just a miracle that he's able to play college basketball in America, yet alone be the best player on one of the best teams in college basketball. Guys, today I will tell you the story of Rui Hachimura and explain why he's gathering comparisons to guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo and the fulfilled potential of Andrew Wiggins. So guys, buckle your seatbelt because this, I can promise you, is a good one. What's good everybody? Tris is on the mic today. In this video, I'm here to inform you of the crazy story of Rui Hachimura, one of the most interesting and intriguing prospects that we have got in this year's draft. Quickly, here are the shoutouts for the day to everybody who follow me on Instagram. That link is in the description. Also, I do respond to literally 100% of comments, so if you leave one for me down below, I will respond. Alright, let's get right back into it. To start out this story, let's visit the childhood of Rui Hachimura. As a kid, Rui had a passion for baseball, a much more popular sport in Japan, and it stuck with him for a very long time, and he eventually became obsessed with American culture, watching American movies and begging for his parents to buy him hamburgers and pizza. When he traveled to New York City one time, he noticed all the basketball courts in almost every other block and was intrigued, and kept in mind that essential part of American culture. Rui continued to avoid basketball until one day, at the age of 13, he was talking to one of his classmates. For whatever reason, that classmate was telling Rui to try out basketball. Rui kept denying it, and as that kid continued to tell him to play, Rui grew more annoyed. And one day, Rui gave in and decided to give this basketball thing a try. To his surprise, his coach would tell him that he was going to be an NBA player one day. Now, I would be surprised too if I were Rui. Think about it. There have only ever been 3 Japanese players to touch an NBA basketball court, and only one has ever been drafted. The only player in the NBA as of right now of Japanese descent is Yuta Watanabe, and he is currently averaging just over 2 points per game this season. This was just one of the many factors that led to the doubt in not only Rui's mind, but scouts, his community, and even his friends' minds. As a kid, when he traveled to New York City, a place so distant to his hometown in Japan, and so much different, he felt at home. In Japan, he said everybody looked the same, and in the streets, it was common for him to get looked at. Whereas in New York, nobody looked twice at the son of a Japanese mother and West African father. And this comforted him because being discriminated against and being labeled as a part of a different group throughout his childhood was just something that he had to get used to. In Japan, there is a racial term used to identify a mixed person, called a hafu, and these people often face ridicule in Japan. And when he eventually began competing for his high school team, it was rare for him not to be discriminated against during games. At the end of junior high, Rui had led his squad to a national title game where they would lose, but it was good enough for him to be noticed by an elite private high school. As he continued to play and travel around Japan, he would get looks by absolutely everybody, and he described it as everybody looking at him like he's an effing animal. With all of this in the background, Rui finished his high school career with 3 straight national championships. Now, Rui Hachimura was invited to participate in the FIBA tournament, where his Japanese squad would somehow manage to take 3rd place, mostly due to him. Facing off against the top recruits from the US including Jason Tatum and Josh Jackson, he put up 25 points against them, and throughout the tournament he averaged 23 points per game. This was good enough for him to be ranked as one of the best international players by ESPN, and really started to intrigue college teams, particularly Gonzaga, because after the FIBA tournament, Rui was told by his athletic trainer that a Gonzaga assistant had tracked down his email address just to be able to have a chance to recruit Rui. Although Rui was very excited, his first question was, "What is Gonzaga?" Well, Roy was given the chance to go find out exactly what the college was like, and again, traveling to America made him feel at home, seeing all the fast food restaurants. With that said, Roy was given a scholarship offer to play at Gonzaga, which made the commitment to play there a no-brainer. Finally, since Roy was getting noticed by the entire world, those Japanese people who were at once discriminatory towards Roy were now asking him for photos and autographs. Unfortunately, since Roy was still learning the English language, there were some questions as to whether he had to spend a year in prep school before college to be able to pass the SAT testing threshold to get into Gonzaga. But fortunately, after the 5th try, Roy passed and immediately moved to Spokane, the home of Gonzaga. Fortunately, as he arrived, Roy would meet a video coordinator who was fluent in Japanese, and this video coordinator ended up playing a huge role in mentoring Roy and translating English directions from his coach. Roy would start getting up at 7:30 to start working out, going to classes, and getting in another workout when those classes were over, which were much busier days than what he was used to. In his first year, Roy was only averaging about 2.5 points while playing under 5 minutes a game. But this was largely due to his inability to understand what was going on and his team's success, making it to the national championship game. There were a few interesting experiences for Roy in his freshman year, including once in practice where he thought his coach was comparing him to Gonzaga great Domantas Sabonis, whose nickname is Domas, but he was actually just calling him a dumbass. There was another time where the coach said it looked like Roy was getting into a pillow fight in the post, and as Roy was thankful of the compliment, his trainer had to inform him that it was more of an insult. Despite this, Roy's freshman year was a huge learning experience but played a huge role in his overall development. His second year, the development really started kicking in both on and off the court for Roy. Playing against Zach Collins in practice really started to benefit him. Since his English was a little bit better, he started picking up on his teammates' slang and listening to rap music. Despite this, whenever Roy nodded at you when he was listening, his coach said it meant he had absolutely no idea what was going on. But this year it got a little bit better, and it showed on the court as Roy was a 6th man now, and he was putting up 12 points per game and about 5 rebounds while barely playing 20 minutes a game, and this was good enough for his draft stock to be around the late 1st round. But Roy thought another year in college would do him justice. Throughout his time in college, Roy had a teammate who was also foreign, Killian Tilly, who would often use the term lit, and eventually Roy picked up on the word and started to use it in almost every sentence. And along with watching American action movies and NBA games together, this teammate bond was something special. By this current season, Roy's junior year, Roy and Tilly were supposed to be a huge threat in the front court. But unfortunately, Tilly would have to get ankle surgery, which meant that Roy was on his own. But Roy would make himself known as a superstar player for the team, putting up 20 points and 7 rebounds per game, shooting almost 60% from the floor and 42% from deep. And he's now one of the most interesting recruits that we've gotten this year, projecting to go very high in the draft lottery in 2019. Now, looking at the game of Rui Hachimura, the kid can pretty much do everything on the court. Known as a super athletic player with a decent jump shot, some may call him a basketball demigod. Like I said earlier in this video, some have compared Roy to the player that Andrew Wiggins would be if he fulfilled his potential, and even some say Giannis Antetokounmpo. Listen, you can think these comparisons are crazy, but Roy is about to be drafted based off both his crazy skill set and his insane potential. It's scary to think what Roy's college career would have looked like if he actually knew what was going on 100% of the time. On top of what Roy is offering in terms of his skill set for an NBA team, his 7'2" wingspan to go along with his 6'9" frame, which has increased 3 inches since high school, makes you think how far Roy can actually go in the NBA. Of course, Roy does have a few weaknesses in his game like any player, including his average playmaking abilities, inconsistent shooting, and the question as to whether he is a small forward or a power forward. But right now, the NBA is trending to a positionless basketball style, and I think that no matter where he is put, Roy will make it work. Wings who can do anything on the court can be deemed basketball unicorns, and I truly believe that Rui is one of them. The guy is fully able to speak English now and seems much more comfortable on the court as well. So, if you remember the beginning of this story where at the age of 13, Rui was being annoyed by his classmate telling him to try out basketball. Well, we gotta go back and find that man who was annoying him and tell him how awesome he is for giving us the player that is Rui Hachimura, the guy who grew up in a place that made Rui feel unaccepted and always out of place, and despite all of that grew to become one of the best players in this year's draft. Guys, I don't know how you are feeling about Rui, but I think that one day he's going to be a very special player in the NBA. And I hope that when that does happen, people will look back at this video and think, man, I became a fan of this guy before he became a household name. I hope you guys are rooting for Rui because I know I certainly am. Anyways guys, I really hope that you all did enjoy this video. If you did make it here, then you are a real one, and don't forget to drop me a like.